Ladies and gentlemen, when we talk about success, we often imagine classrooms, degrees, and certificates. But history has taught us something different. True success doesn't always come from what we are taught, but from what we choose to learn. Self-education is not just an alternative to formal education. It is the fuel that powers growth, resilience, and innovation. Let's explore 10 reasons why self-education is the key to success. 1. It gives you ownership of your growth. When you choose to learn on your own, you take responsibility for your journey. Success feels different when you own the process. 2. It teaches adaptability. The world changes faster than any curriculum. Self-education keeps you relevant, equipping you with the tools to adapt to new challenges. 3. It builds discipline. No teacher is reminding you to finish a chapter. Self-education demands consistency and focus, 2 traits every successful person needs. 4. It expands creativity. When you learn outside the boundaries of structured education, you connect dots in new ways. Innovation is often born in self-taught spaces. 5. It nurtures problem-solving. Life rarely hands us pre-written solutions. Self-education encourages curiosity and develops the ability to figure things out independently. 6. It sharpens decision-making. The more you read, explore, and reflect, the better your judgment becomes. Decision-making is the cornerstone of leadership and progress. 7. It grows confidence. Knowing that you can teach yourself anything builds a powerful belief. You are not limited by what you don't know. 8. It saves time and opens doors. You can learn at your own pace, focus on what matters, and apply it immediately, turning knowledge into opportunity. 9. It creates lifelong learners. Success is not a destination, it's a process. Self-education keeps the fire of learning alive long after formal education ends. 10. It empowers you to write your own story. Perhaps the greatest reason of all, self-education frees you from the script written by others and hands you the pen to craft your own narrative. So, success is not about knowing everything. It is about building the mindset to keep learning, unlearning, and relearning. And the best part, you don't need permission to start. The question is not, can you learn? The question is, are you willing to learn for yourself? Thank you. 5 keynotes of the speech. Self-education builds responsibility and ownership over personal growth. Adaptability and creativity flourish outside structured systems. Discipline and consistency from self-learning become foundations of success. Confidence and decision-making improve through continuous self-teaching. Self-education empowers individuals to craft their own path and story. Self-education builds responsibility and ownership over personal growth because it shifts the center of control from outside influences to the individual. In formal education, much of the structure is already provided. Classes are scheduled, assignments are given, and exams are designed to measure progress. The student's role is often to comply and perform within those boundaries. While this structure has its benefits, it also creates dependency. The learner waits for instructions, waits for validation, and waits for someone else to set the pace of their growth. Self-education, on the other hand, removes that framework and demands that the learner themselves take responsibility for both the process and the results. There is no teacher assigning deadlines, no classroom dictating attendance, and no syllabus mapping the journey. Instead, the individual must decide what to learn, how to learn it, and why it matters. That responsibility builds a unique kind of ownership that becomes a lifelong asset. When someone embraces self-education, they are essentially declaring that their growth is their own duty. This mindset creates a profound shift. It means that learning is no longer dependent on external approval or validation. The learner is not waiting for someone else to say, "No, you're ready." Instead, they step forward with initiative, acknowledging that progress is earned by effort and curiosity. This ownership transforms how knowledge is perceived. Information stops being something handed down from authority figures and becomes something actively sought after. The learner is no longer a passive receiver, but an active creator in their personal development. This ownership also creates accountability. When you choose to learn a skill, read a book, or practice a discipline, you know that your results are tied directly to your effort. If you procrastinate, no one else suffers the consequences. If you apply yourself, no one can take away the growth you've achieved. This accountability sharpens focus. It removes the excuses that often come with blaming teachers, systems, or circumstances. A self-educated person learns early that their future is not limited by what was given to them, but by what they are willing to pursue on their own. This responsibility, while heavy, is also deeply empowering. Consider how this plays out in real life. Someone who teaches themselves coding, for instance, doesn't wait for a professor to assign projects. They practice by building, testing, and failing on their own terms. Every success becomes more meaningful because it was earned through initiative, and every failure becomes a lesson owned personally rather than a mark on a grading sheet. Over time, this process develops resilience. A self-educated person is less fragile in the face of setbacks because they recognize that growth is not tied to passing or failing within a system, but to their persistence in continuing to learn. This sense of ownership extends beyond technical skills. It influences attitudes, habits, and even identity. A person who takes responsibility for their own growth begins to see themselves as capable of shaping their destiny. They do not rely on the world to give them permission to improve. Instead, they adopt the mindset that progress is always available to those who seek it. This mindset creates momentum. Every new book read, every new concept understood, and every new skill practiced reinforces the belief that success is built, not given. That belief becomes a powerful driver of long-term achievement. Another important dimension of ownership through self-education is that it develops intrinsic motivation. When someone studies out of personal interest, they are not motivated by grades, certificates, or external recognition. Their motivation comes from the joy of discovery, the challenge of solving problems, or the vision of creating a better version of themselves. This intrinsic drive is more sustainable than external rewards because it does not depend on the approval of others. It turns learning into a lifelong habit rather than a temporary requirement. When learning is fueled by personal purpose, it becomes easier to stay consistent even when the path is difficult. Taking responsibility for growth also builds character. It demands discipline to sit down and study without being told to do so. It requires humility to admit what you don't know and courage to step into new fields where you might fail at first. Over time, these qualities strengthen not only the mind, but also the spirit. A person who embraces self-education develops a stronger sense of self, grounded in the understanding that their future is their responsibility. They do not wait for opportunities, they prepare for them. They do not see limitations as permanent, they see them as challenges to overcome through effort and learning. Ultimately, self-education creates a sense of ownership that cannot be replicated by any system. It teaches individuals to lead themselves before they lead others. By taking responsibility for their own growth, they gain confidence in their ability to shape outcomes. That confidence is contagious. It inspires others, creates new opportunities, and lays the foundation for success that is both sustainable and deeply personal. When people realize that their progress belongs to them, they stop waiting for the world to teach them and start teaching themselves. In that moment, success begins to move from possibility to reality. Self-education teaches adaptability because it allows individuals to continuously evolve alongside the fast, changing world around them. The reality is that knowledge is never static. Technology advances, industries transform, and societies shift in ways that often render old information irrelevant. A curriculum written 10 years ago might no longer equip a person for the demands of today, let alone tomorrow. In such a world, adaptability is not just an advantage, it is a necessity. Self-education cultivates this trait because it places the learner in a constant cycle of exploration, reflection, and adjustment. Instead of depending on a fixed system to dictate what must be known, a self-taught individual develops the ability to recognize gaps, seek out solutions, and apply them as the environment demands. Adaptability through self-education begins with curiosity. When someone chooses to learn beyond formal structures, they start developing a habit of asking questions. How does this work? Why is this happening? What could make this better? These questions act as doors to new perspectives. Unlike rigid systems that prescribe the same knowledge to everyone, self-education allows the learner to dive deeper into areas of personal relevance. This flexibility naturally builds the ability to adapt because the individual becomes skilled at tailoring their learning to suit changing goals, challenges, or opportunities. Curiosity turns into an instinct for growth, and that instinct creates a mindset that is ready for change rather than resistant to it. Adaptability also emerges from the freedom to pivot. A person who relies solely on additional education often feels confined to a single track, one career, one field, or one set of skills. But a self-educated person understands that no path is final. If an industry collapses, if technology replaces old roles, or if interests evolve, the self-taught learner does not feel stranded. They already know how to teach themselves new skills and transition into new areas. This ability to pivot without fear is one of the strongest expressions of adaptability. It prevents stagnation and enables continuous relevance in a world where jobs, technologies, and even cultural landscapes are in constant motion. Failure also plays a role in this process. In structured education, failure is often seen as a measure of inadequacy, but in self-education, failure becomes feedback. When teaching themselves, individuals encounter countless mistakes. They misinterpret concepts, try ineffective methods, and sometimes hit dead ends. Instead of these being punishable errors, they become lessons that encourage adjustment. This experience trains the mind to embrace change rather than resist it. Adaptability is, in essence, the willingness to modify one's approach until progress is made. Through repeated cycles of trial and error, self-educated individuals grow comfortable with uncertainty and resilient in the face of setbacks. This resilience is what makes them flexible when the unexpected inevitably arrives. Adaptability also grows out of exposure to diverse information. Self-education rarely follows a single narrow line. Someone teaching themselves might read books, watch lectures, explore online courses, experiment with real-world projects, and connect with people from different backgrounds. This variety exposes them to multiple perspectives and alternative ways of thinking. The mind becomes less rigid and more open to unconventional ideas. The ability to switch perspectives, to see problems from angles that others may miss, is a direct outcome of this practice. And in a world where success often depends on creativity and innovation, this mental flexibility is invaluable. Consider how adaptability through self-education manifests in real life. A professional who notices that their industry is being reshaped by artificial intelligence does not wait for an official training program to be rolled out. Instead, they dive into articles, tutorials, and case studies to understand the tools shaping the future. By doing so, they adapt before the change fully arrives. Or think of an entrepreneur who must pivot their business model when market demands shift. The ability to quickly learn about new trends, consumer behaviors, and strategies ensures survival where rigidity would lead to failure. In both cases, adaptability is not an abstract quality. It is the practical ability to learn, adjust, and apply knowledge faster than the pace of change. Another critical dimension is that adaptability born from self-education is internal, not external. In formal systems, change is often slow and imposed from the outside. But in self-education, change is embraced from within. The learner develops a personal habit of scanning the environment and asking, what is different today compared to yesterday? What do I need to know now that I didn't before? This internal readiness prevents complacency. It ensures that when disruption arrives, the individual has already built the habit of shifting gears rather than clinging to what no longer works. At its core, adaptability is about survival and growth. It is about recognizing that the world will not pause for us to catch up. We must keep moving forward with it. Self-education ensures that this movement is not reactive but proactive. By constantly choosing to learn, adjust, and expand knowledge, individuals build the muscles of adaptability that keep them relevant in any era. They are not limited to the boundaries of a fixed education because they know that learning never ends, and neither does their ability to change with the times. Self-education builds discipline because it requires a person to rely on their own structure rather than an external system to keep them accountable. In traditional education, there are schedules, deadlines, and authority figures that guide and sometimes even force students to stay on track. Teachers assign tasks, examinations create pressure, and a curriculum provides direction. But when someone takes the path of self-education, none of these supports are present. The learner has to decide when to study, what to focus on, and how much effort to invest. This process demands self-control, consistency, and determination. Over time, these qualities grow stronger because the learner repeatedly chooses action over distraction and responsibility over excuses. This is the essence of discipline, doing what is necessary even when it is not easy or immediately rewarding. Self-education teaches the value of routine. For example, if someone decides to learn a new language on their own, they must commit to regular practice. There is no teacher reminding them to study vocabulary or practice speaking. The progress they make depends entirely on their willingness to create time and stick to it. At first, this can feel challenging because there is always the temptation to postpone learning or replace it with more comfortable activities. Yet, as they continue to push through these moments, they strengthen the mental muscle of discipline. Each small act of persistence adds up, reinforcing the habit of consistency that later becomes second nature. Discipline built through self-education is different from discipline imposed by external systems because it is self-driven. When someone studies for an exam simply to avoid failing, their motivation is tied to external pressure. But when they study because they genuinely want to grow, their discipline comes from within. This internal drive is more powerful and sustainable because it is not dependent on fear of punishment or the need for approval. It comes from a deeper sense of purpose. The learner begins to understand that discipline is not a limitation, but a form of freedom. It allows them to stay in control of their growth and their future. One of the most significant ways self-education strengthens discipline is through delayed gratification. The rewards of self-learning are rarely immediate. Reading a book today might not bring results until months later when an idea from that book helps solve a problem. Practicing a skill might feel repetitive and unrewarding until, over time, mastery begins to show. This gap between effort and outcome trains the learner to be patient. Discipline thrives in this space because it teaches the individual to value long-term progress over short-term comfort. The willingness to put in effort now for results that will only appear later is what separates those who succeed from those who give up too soon. Self-education also teaches discipline through the necessity of focus. In an age filled with distractions, social media, entertainment, endless notifications, the ability to sit down and concentrate is becoming increasingly rare. For a self-learner, focus is not optional, it is essential. They must learn to silence distractions, set boundaries, and create environments that support learning. This act of controlling attention is itself a practice of discipline. Each time they choose focus over distraction, they are training themselves to resist impulses and stay aligned with their goals. This skill extends far beyond learning. It becomes useful in careers, relationships, and personal development because the ability to direct attention is one of the greatest strengths a person can cultivate. Another aspect of discipline through self-education is resilience. There are moments when learning feels overwhelming. Concepts seem too difficult, progress feels too slow, or motivation dips. In those moments, it would be easy to quit. But a self-educated person quickly learns that persistence is the only path forward. By pushing through those struggles, they develop endurance. Discipline is not about perfection or never feeling tired. It is about showing up consistently even when conditions are not ideal. This resilience strengthens character and creates a mindset that success is built on effort, not luck. The discipline gained through self-education often spills into other areas of life. Someone who has trained themselves to dedicate an hour a day to learning might also find it easier to commit to regular exercise, manage their finances responsibly, or build meaningful habits in their personal life. This happens because discipline is transferable. The structure and control developed in one area create confidence and stability that can influence many others. What starts as discipline in learning eventually becomes discipline in living. An important part of this process is self-reflection. A self-learner does not only absorb knowledge, but also evaluates how well they are progressing, what needs improvement, and where they might be wasting time. This honest assessment requires discipline because it means facing weaknesses without excuses. Instead of blaming systems or circumstances, they accept responsibility and make adjustments. This ability to self-correct deepens their discipline, teaching them that growth requires honesty, effort, and consistency. Ultimately, discipline from self-education is not just about staying on track with studies, it is about shaping a mindset that embraces responsibility and persistence. It teaches that progress is not built on bursts of effort, but on steady, deliberate actions repeated over time. Each choice to study when it is easier to relax, each moment of focus when distractions are calling, and each act of patience when results are slow, all of these choices create discipline. And discipline, once developed, becomes a constant companion on the journey to success. Self-education expands creativity because it opens the mind to possibilities beyond traditional boundaries. When learning is confined strictly to structured systems, the material often follows a fixed path. There are set rules, predetermined answers, and little room for exploration outside the syllabus. While this can provide a solid foundation, it rarely leaves space for innovation. Self-education, however, allows an individual to follow curiosity wherever it leads. Instead of being restricted to one textbook or one perspective, a self-learner can explore multiple sources, experiment with different methods, and connect ideas that others may not see as related. This freedom nurtures creativity, as it is often the combination of seemingly unrelated ideas that produces new solutions, original insights, and breakthroughs. Creativity flourishes in environments where exploration is encouraged, and self-education creates exactly that environment. A person teaching themselves is not bound to learn only what is deemed necessary by institutions. They can dive into subjects that capture their interest, no matter how unconventional they may seem. This opens up diverse mental landscapes. For example, someone learning programming on their own might also study psychology, art, or philosophy because of personal interest. While these areas may appear unrelated, when combined, they can lead to fresh ideas such as designing more intuitive software, creating artistic digital tools, or understanding how users think. This kind of interdisciplinary learning is a hallmark of creativity, and self-education makes it possible because it places no walls around the learner's curiosity. The process of teaching oneself naturally involves experimentation. Unlike formal education, where right and wrong answers are often predefined, self-education is full of trial and error. A person may try different techniques, tools, or approaches until they discover what works best. This trial and error process is fertile ground for creativity because it forces the learner to think outside the box and test unconventional solutions. In many cases, the mistakes made during self-education spark new ideas that would never have been discovered otherwise. Creativity is not about avoiding mistakes, but about using them as stepping stones toward innovation. Self-education also encourages originality because it nurtures independence of thought. In formal systems, learners often feel pressure to conform to standard answers or accepted ways of thinking. Success is defined by how well one can replicate what has already been taught. In contrast, self-education rewards individuality. When someone learns for themselves, they are free to form their own opinions, challenge established ideas, and explore alternative perspectives. This independence creates space for unique voices and fresh contributions. Many great innovators and creators throughout history were self-educated in some way because they were not limited by conventional thinking, but instead gave themselves permission to imagine differently. Another way self-education broadens creativity is through exposure to endless resources. With books, podcasts, videos, online lectures, and communities across the world, a self-learner has access to an ocean of knowledge. Each new source of information provides a new perspective, and when these perspectives interact in the mind, new ideas emerge. Creativity thrives on diversity, and the variety of resources available to those who take control of their own learning makes them more likely to generate ideas that are original and impactful. The ability to seek knowledge from multiple angles ensures that the learner is not confined to a single worldview, but instead has the capacity to draw inspiration from countless different sources. Creativity also grows stronger when learning is fueled by passion. Unlike structured education, which often requires studying subjects regardless of personal interests, self-education is driven by choice. A person learns because they want to, not because they have to. This element of passion adds energy to the process. When people are genuinely interested in what they are learning, they are more willing to spend extra time exploring, experimenting, and pushing beyond the basics. This deeper engagement leads to more imaginative ideas and innovative solutions because creativity often arises when people are deeply absorbed in something they love. Consider how this plays out in practice. A musician who teaches themselves new techniques might combine classical styles with modern sounds in ways that surprise audiences. An entrepreneur who learns marketing strategies on their own may experiment with unconventional campaigns that capture attention. An artist who explores science through self-education may incorporate scientific concepts into their work, producing creations that are both intellectually stimulating and visually striking. In all these examples, creativity blossoms because the individual is not following a pre-written formula, but instead carving out their own path, guided by curiosity and experimentation. Self-education also trains the mind to embrace flexibility, which is vital for creativity. Formal systems often promote linear thinking, step 1, step 2, step 3. But real-world problems rarely unfold in a straight line. Creativity requires nonlinear thinking, the ability to jump between ideas, reframe challenges, and imagine new possibilities. By allowing learners to create their own paths, Self-education fosters this kind of flexible thinking. The learner becomes comfortable navigating ambiguity and uncertainty, both of which are key conditions for creative breakthroughs. Ultimately, creativity thrives where freedom, passion, and experimentation intersect. Self-education provides all three. It empowers individuals to pursue their interests without restriction, fuels their drive with genuine curiosity, and gives them the space to test ideas without fear of failure. This process not only generates creative ideas, but also develops a creative mindset, a way of seeing the world as full of possibilities rather than limitations. Through self-education, people learn that knowledge is not just something to consume, but something to transform, combine, and reshape into new forms. And in that transformation, creativity becomes not just an outcome, but a natural part of who they are. Self-education nurtures problem solving because it places the learner in situations where answers are not handed over neatly, but must be uncovered through exploration, persistence, and experimentation. In traditional learning environments, problems are often carefully designed with clear solutions that can be checked against an answer sheet. While this can train basic skills, it does not always prepare people for the complexity of real-life challenges where problems are unstructured, unpredictable, and sometimes without a single correct solution. Self-education forces individuals to face this complexity directly. By choosing what to learn, how to approach it, and how to apply it, the learner naturally encounters obstacles that require them to think critically and find solutions on their own. This repeated practice of facing the unknown builds a strong foundation for problem solving that extends far beyond the classroom. Problem solving and self-education begins with curiosity. When someone takes responsibility for their own learning, they are often motivated by questions: how does this work? Why does this system fail? What could make this better? These questions lead them into areas where existing answers may not be obvious. For instance, a person teaching themselves graphic design might face the problem of making their work stand out in a crowded industry. They cannot simply turn to a single book for the solution. Instead, they must research, experiment with different styles, study what others are doing, and apply creative thinking to develop their own approach. This kind of process is the essence of problem solving, identifying a challenge, exploring possible options, testing them, and learning from both successes and failures. One of the most valuable aspects of self-education is the way it teaches learners to deal with uncertainty. Unlike structured learning, where steps are laid out clearly, self-education often feels like navigating without a map. At first, this can feel intimidating, but over time, it strengthens the ability to make decisions with incomplete information. This is a crucial problem-solving skill because most of life's challenges do not come with perfect clarity. Whether in business, personal life, or creative endeavors, people must often act with partial knowledge, trusting their reasoning and adjusting as they go. Self-educated individuals practice this skill constantly, making them more adaptable and effective problem solvers. Another important way self-education nurtures problem solving is through resilience. When someone teaches themselves, they are bound to face obstacles, confusing material, technical barriers, lack of immediate guidance, or even failure in application. Each obstacle becomes opportunity to practice persistence. Rather than giving up or waiting for someone else to step in, the self-learner has to push through, try alternative approaches, and find creative ways around the difficulty. This builds a mindset that sees problems not as roadblocks, but as challenges to be overcome. Over time, this mindset becomes second nature, allowing the individual to tackle increasingly complex issues with confidence. Self-education also broadens the toolbox available for problem solving. By exploring a wide range of sources and disciplines, self-learners collect different methods, perspectives, and frameworks. These diverse tools can be applied in unexpected ways. For example, someone who studies both psychology and marketing on their own might approach a business challenge differently than someone who only studied marketing in school. They can use insights from human behavior to solve problems creatively, creating solutions that others might miss. This ability to draw from multiple areas of knowledge is a powerful advantage because many of today's most pressing problems require interdisciplinary thinking. The trial and error nature of self-education is another key driver of problem-solving ability. Each time a learner experiments and fails, they are forced to adjust their approach. They learn not only what does not work, but also why it does not work, which sharpens analytical thinking. Over time, they develop a deeper understanding of how to approach challenges systematically. Instead of panicking when something goes wrong, they begin to see patterns and problems and develop strategies for tackling them more efficiently. This process creates confidence in their ability to solve future challenges, even ones they have never faced before. In practical life, this skill has endless applications. An entrepreneur teaching themselves how to run a business quickly realizes that no manual can cover every issue that arises, whether it is handling customer complaints, navigating cash flow problems, or adapting to market shifts. They must solve problems daily, often with limited resources. Similarly, someone learning a new technology on their own may need to troubleshoot errors, search for community solutions, and experiment until they find the answer. These situations, repeated often, train them to become not just consumers of knowledge, but active problem solvers who can create solutions where none previously existed. Self-education also builds confidence in problem solving because it shows people that they are capable of finding answers without constant supervision or instruction. Each challenge they overcome on their own reinforces the belief that they can handle the next one. This confidence is critical because many people avoid tackling problems, not because they lack ability, but because they doubt themselves. A self-educated person learns through repeated practice that they can face uncertainty, work through obstacles, and arrive at solutions. This growing confidence turns into a strength that carries into every aspect of their life. At its core, problem solving is about mindset as much as skill. Self-education instills the mindset that problems are not barriers, but opportunities to grow, learn, and create. By consistently engaging with challenges, experimenting with different approaches, and drawing from a wide range of knowledge, self-learners develop the ability to approach any problem with creativity, resilience, and determination. This ability becomes one of the most valuable assets in the pursuit of success because no path to achievement is free of obstacles. Those who can solve problems consistently are the ones who continue moving forward when others stop. In the end, success is not about the degrees we hang on our walls or the certificates we collect. It is about the mindset we cultivate and the actions we take. Self-education gives us ownership of our growth, teaches us to adapt in a changing world, instills the discipline to stay the course, expands our creativity, and strengthens our ability to solve problems. These are not just skills, they are foundations for a meaningful and resilient life. When we choose to learn for ourselves, we stop waiting for the world to give us direction and start creating our own path. The truth is, knowledge is everywhere: books, conversations, experiences, and even failures. The question is whether we will take responsibility to seek it out and use it. Self-education is the key because it reminds us that our success is not determined by what we were given, but by what we are willing to pursue. The greatest investment you will ever make is in your ability to keep learning. And the moment you embrace that, you unlock the power to shape your own future.